Yo, we got our guest, man. Before we bring in our guest, this is a good time to say thank you to everybody that's tuned in to the show today. The chat has been active. Make sure you like, subscribe to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and sign up for Overtime. Today's Overtime topic is my favorite movie of all time is blank and why. So make sure y'all check that out. Joining us right now, courtesy of ESPN, is Chris Herring. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate you.
Well, Chris, we just got the news. Koby Altman, received an extension. Him and his staff, and we just talked about how good they have done in terms of rebuilding the roster after LeBron. Around the league, where do you think he is ranked as? We threw the question out. Is he looked at as an elite general manager? What do you think about his, his perception around the league within the NBA?
I think he's perceived really well throughout the league. I mean, anytime you're coming out of what the Cavs were coming out of, it's not necessarily the easiest position to be in. I think anytime you're talking about a team having, the most wins that they've had since the LeBron era, including the LeBron era, that's a pretty big deal. And it's not just that, I know people were disappointed that they were out in the second round. It's also something where clearly they have upside to do more. And it wasn't just a team built for this past year or the year before that or anything like that. They have a footprint to be able to move forward, particularly now. I think next year will be interesting, obviously, because of all the injuries that have taken place throughout the East. But this is a good roster. It's not just a good core. I think the guys kind of in the middle and the bottom of the roster are pretty good players too. And it's also not easy to, especially for that market, a smaller market, to be able to say, okay, we can't pay a $250 million luxury tax or second apron tax. So how do we cut back and still make this a competitive roster? I thought the move for Lonzo Ball was really, really smart without costing them a ton and, just costing them a guy that at times is not going to be playing in the postseason anyway. So it's really easy to like what they've done. It's really easy to look at Kenny Atkinson and see immediately how he kind of upgraded certain things about this team when moving on from JB Bickerstaff.
Chris, when you look at this team, right now, FanDuel, I believe, has them favored as the team to make it out of the East. When you look at this Cavs team and the way that they failed in the playoffs these last couple of years, what do you credit it to why they weren't able to get it done, and what makes you confident that maybe they can turn it around this year?
Well, I don't want to give a cop-out answer, but I mean, I don't think you can take too lightly the idea of injuries. I mean, it's always tough for me, and I think people were criticizing this about Stephen A. at times during the playoffs, where on the one hand he's saying Tyrese Halliburton shouldn't be out there, based on how he looks in game 5 or whatever it is with the injury. And then he basically says, well, he needs to play game 6 or else, what are we doing? This is the NBA Finals. So I'd never liked that dichotomy of the either or. There's a lot of gray in there, and guys get hurt. Guys play hurt, and of course you want them to play, you want them to play through stuff during the playoffs, but it comes at a cost sometimes, and Darius Garland is no different. He's going to probably miss maybe considerable time to start the season. So if he was playing through something that is going to keep him out even into the regular season now, you can imagine how banged up he was during the playoffs to try to play through that. They were not healthy during the playoffs. Would that have made the complete difference? Would they have beaten Indiana had they been fully healthy? Maybe. Indiana kind of looked like a team on a mission, but I don't think you can really just push all the way past that and just ignore it as if it wasn't a thing. And I think the other thing is that this team is still developing to some extent. I think they had enough to get it done, and I think certainly I and a lot of other people expected more from them. Evan Mobley still is growing as a player. He obviously took a huge step forward as far as the 3-ball, as far as being able to do even more defensively. But I think that the best is still yet to come for him. And so it's not to say, again, that you can't get to the finals or the conference finals before guys have really reached their peak. I don't think Oklahoma City has peaked yet necessarily, but I do think that it takes kind of, generally speaking, it's when everybody is playing their best ball, and Cleveland just didn't have that chance. It's also rare to see a first-year coach take a team to a finals, a conference finals. It happens, but it's not necessarily something that is expected. And I also think the type of season they had, for them to get 64 wins, they ended up that way, and they were obviously the best team in the East from the very beginning, but that was not the expectation. And so, to kind of play up to that level when you've done it all season, sometimes it's kind of hard to live up to the hype of what you've built during the regular season.
What's up, stranger? It's been a minute.
It's good to see you, man. How's everything?
Good, buddy. Glad to have you on. I want to go a little bit different direction than just Cavs with you, because I know you've got this background. When Jeannie Buss sold the Lakers, that was sort of the final one to me of like, okay, what's going on? Because when you see Mark Cuban sell, and then you see Jeannie Buss sell, and the Grusbecks get out, and Lasry got out in Milwaukee, I think, because he didn't have the money to where this was going. And maybe that's the answer, is these guys just don't have the liquidity to meet the payroll of where this league is headed. But I am like amazed that with repeat offender and all this other stuff, the league is getting so expensive that the owners can't even afford their teams now.
Yeah.
What is happening with some of this stuff with the owners? Are you as surprised by this as I am? And where are we headed? Where is this league headed that all of these these pillars of the league are now selling their teams?
It's fascinating, to be honest with you. And it's funny because at the beginning of this, when certain people were selling, you can always write it as a one-off. Maybe someone doesn't want to have to be this involved anymore. Maybe someone just wants a smaller stake. Maybe, life circumstances. Like a lot of us don't want to work our whole lives. And granted, owners, the way they work is probably a lot different than us. But just wanting to get out before they, for kind of the twilight of their life, their career, whatever. You can do that as a one-off when Cuban's doing it or the Grusbecks are doing it. This is kind of a pattern now, though, I think. And it's been very, very interesting to watch because when you watch, we've heard for years, I remember when the Lakers let Alex Caruso walk in free agency so that he could go to the Bulls in the first place. And thinking like, okay, I remember the rumor that they talked to Alex Caruso about like, yeah, well, we're going to give you $8 million, but it's really like we're paying you $20 million because the taxes are going to mean this. And, Alex Caruso being confused, like, why would that be an appealing sell to me? And how cheap that sounded on the Lakers' behalf, given that they're the Lakers. But that tells you about the fact that NBA owners already felt like it was really expensive to do this before. And now at these salaries, all of a sudden, it feels like every 2 years we're going from Damian Lillard getting 55 or 60 million a year, and now we're already 72 million a year for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think Devin Booker just got the same thing. In a year or two from now, we'll be talking about guys making 80 million a year. It's a new ballgame in terms of that. And I think the one that really sold me on what you're talking about, Jason, was when the Celtics won the title. And within a week of that, you're hearing about the Celtics selling. And the owners selling the team is like they wanted nothing to do with where this money was going, and they just didn't have it, the ownership. And so I think where we're headed now, frankly, is private equity, which is someone who's worked for corporations that have been bought partially by private equity. That's terrifying to me. I think private equity has a tendency to kind of mess things up in this country. But it's, the idea of the Lakers no longer being ma and pop and being run by people that have really corporate interests beyond just the team is a fascinating landscape. And, the very beginning, the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we're talking about as far as the money that's going to be spent on these teams. And it's not going to be for the faint of heart as far as the spending is concerned.
Well, let me piggyback off that. Why would you ever, if you're a team that is literally, theoretically that you don't have enough young talent who hasn't reached those max players or in that max salary, and you got maybe one guy who is a max player, why would you ever sign a max guy? Because you can't keep him. Like right now, we have Darius Garland, we have Donovan Mitchell, you have Evan Mobley. In 2 years, can the Cavs play three of those guys?
I guess it remains to be seen. I guess the flip side of it too, why would you want to? You always can trade these guys if they're healthy, right? I don't think the Thunder will have any problem unless it's a health situation. trading a Shea, trading a Jalen Williams, trading a Chet Holmgren. And that is a valuable currency, as we're seeing with Giannis, by the way, too. I mean, and I think that, granted, Giannis is Giannis, and so I don't want to necessarily say that every player is equivalent to him. They're not. But think about how hard Milwaukee is fighting tooth and nail to keep this guy. Cutting Damian Lillard, which was unprecedented to see someone with that much money in this era cut and just waved and stretched. They're fighting to keep him because it's kind of like, well, what do we do if it's not him? And what message does it send if he doesn't want to be here? Like, who else would really want to play here if he's not here? So I think that's part of it is, and I think you're connecting it to what I said of like, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not just easy to hand over contracts to these guys necessarily of that size, but show me a team in recent history in this era of the NBA that didn't have at least one of those guys to go win a title. And it's okay. Like, not every team is playing for a title every year. We know that. But to build that out, you certainly need to, like, you're going to at some point get to a point where you've got to pay somebody that kind of money. Oklahoma City had Shea, and he was obviously on this trajectory for a few years. But prior to that, you didn't necessarily know that Jalen Williams was going to be what he is. You didn't necessarily know that Chet was going to develop into what he is. You've got to have a willingness once you get guys to this level to be paid to pay them. If not, it does raise the question of like, why are you even in this?
Chris, let me ask the $1 million question that all Cleveland fans want to know. Is LeBron being bought? Is he going to get bought out by the Lakers, and will he end up signing with the Cavs?
Man, part of me still can't really imagine that. I mean, you never want to say it's impossible. Obviously, if he decided that was what he wanted to do, I think it becomes more of an interesting conversation. In the same way that if Giannis decided, I want to go play in New York or any other place, it puts pressure on the organization that they've made it known. Rich Paul could probably do that with a single phone call, a single text to people in those circles to at least start that train down the tracks. Does he want that? It seems like everything about his life is kind of centered on staying in LA, and his family is there, and he's got a ton of business interests out there. To me, the way that they're talking about a lot of this stuff, it still kind of feels like aspects of his team are kind of like a little bit blindsided by how much they've handed the reins to Luka this quickly. So I don't know if it's more posturing. I don't know if it's just to kind of leave himself an opening. As Jason knows, and a ton of people in that orbit know, he rarely does or says anything without there being a rationale or a reason for it. He's one of those people where, like, when there's been smoke, there's fire eventually. So I'm very curious to see how these next few weeks play out. I'm very curious to see, assuming they get to the regular season, what this season looks like. But part of me, just my gut feeling is that Cleveland is a little too young to really meaningfully shake up what they have going. But if you were ever going to do that for anybody, you're doing it for a kind of a favorite son and someone that grew up in the area and has already brought a title to the area. It seems like a storybook ending, but again, he seems like he's pretty happy, or at least was pretty happy with everything in LA prior to this. His son also plays for the Lakers, so it's like that's a part of it too. Not to say that couldn't be picked up and taken somewhere else. But it's like, for me, it's still a little bit hard to get over certain hurdles. I still kind of feel like I'll end up being a Laker at the end of it.
All right, Chris. So the executive producer of this show, Steve Becker, is a Michigan man. Ooh. I just got a text, to throw a Michigan question in there. You're a Michigan man.
Oh, gosh.
No, Tyvee, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. I got you. I got you. Right now.
I got you, bro. I got you. How well do you know your Michigan sports?
I mean, if we're talking football, pretty decently, certainly my lifetime, and even probably a little bit before that. But I'm 38, so pretty decently during that run, certainly the last 15, 20 years. But outside of that, outside of basketball specifically, the football and basketball, not great.
This is perfect. This is perfect for my question then. So I have somebody that I'm a fan of that went to Michigan, and I'm curious where you rank this player amongst all Michigan hoopers. Where would you put Naz Hillman, men and women, amongst Michigan hoopers?
Naz Hillman was nasty. Like, you're not gonna hear any sort of, man. To be honest with you, I'm not gonna really put anybody above Naz Hillman. Like I feel like
I
not
agree
with
with
an
you.
argument where like I feel so strongly about it. She was amazing, and I feel like even watching the basketball team, I used to cover women's basketball when I was at Michigan as a student, and they were not good during that era. But I never really made a point to go back and I didn't have as much curiosity as I should have had about the program after I stopped covering it. Naz Hillman made me more interested in that side of it than the men's side, certainly during the time she was at Michigan. So that, I mean, you're not going to hear me say a single word or even like muster an argument to say that there were people. I'd have to really sit and think. It's also harder, like when you talk about the WNBA and making it into the WNBA and being a certain pick in the WNBA, it's to me a lot harder to ascend that than it is the men's side almost, because there's just so few spots in the WNBA. So mad props to Naz, and I'm super proud of her, super excited to kind of see where her career goes.
Here's my theory. It's easy to put her number one. She's the only person in Michigan history that got a 50-point game. If you look at her numbers when it comes to career rebounds and points,
That's crazy.
she's one of few players that's in the top three or both. Think about it. Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, Chris Webber all hooped at Michigan, and none of them dropped 50.
Yep. I mean, and that's what I'm saying too. Is like the level of star power. I don't know. I guess you could make the argument on some level that when you are a singular star in your team, because like I think that was the other thing with like the guys you threw in with the Fab Five, they were playing together, so it's going to be harder to drop theoretically harder. What opportunity do you even have to post a 50-point game when you're playing with that sort of talent? But I don't know, man. Like I just, the thing I love about Naz is that it was kind of during that same Caitlin Clark era, basically, and so it's like you have individual singular stars that everything is kind of wrapped around them. The whole program is really wrapped around them. But that's hard. Like, that's really hard to do that with that sort of weight on you. And Michigan was just flourishing. It wasn't something where we're doing this and we want her to get her points and her accolades, but the rest of the team, like, in doing that, sometimes you do that, not to be rude, but, like, I covered Carmelo Anthony and you know, we're talking about LeBron and all the things he does. I covered Melo, and Melo was wonderful, obviously. But there'd be times where you'd watch him, and you could kind of tell, like, he's going to take this shot no matter what, no matter how heavily he's covered. And the offense may suffer for it, like, for the last 6 minutes of a game. And it didn't feel like that. It never felt like that with Naz. Like, you always felt like the game was better placed in her hands because she was going to make the right decisions. It wasn't necessarily selfishness. So, I'm, again, like, just a huge, huge fan and really happy for her.
Chris, we appreciate it. We enjoy having you on. We want to get you back on, talk a little Cavaliers. And
Chris, I'm more of a Kelsey Mitchell guy myself, so go Bucks.
Are you? Understood. Again, I feel like when I talk about things I can't argue with meaningfully, because it's like probably not going to go anywhere, Michigan, Ohio State stuff is normally one of those things.
Chris, we appreciate you. Have a good rest of your day, man.
I'll see you, buddy.
You guys be well. It's really good to be with you.
All right, man. Listen, that was